So 9/11 came and went. Where was religion? Next on the Atheist Viewpoint. Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Atheist Viewpoint. I'm your co-host, Ron Barrier.
And I'm Dennis Horvitz.
And once again, this program brought to you through the good graces of American Atheists Incorporated. You can check out our website at www.atheists.org. We are going to talk a little bit this show now. It's post 9/11. The ceremonies have come and gone. Of course, and what ceremony, when religion is involved, can proceed without controversy, doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. But before we get to that, let me share a little amusing story. That was this was posted and reported by Fox 40 News in Sacramento, California. This occurred in late August of this year, after allegedly showing up drunk to a baptism on Saturday at All Hallows Catholic Church in Sacramento. Reverend Julian Medina has been suspended by the Catholic Diocese of Sacramento, according to a report by Fox 40 News. The 64-year-old was scheduled to baptize 15 infants in front of about 150 people, but instead showed up 1 hour late, slurred his words, and had to be carried out of the church after falling over, CBS 17 reports. A worker had to call in a deacon to perform the sacrament. The priest has been with the diocese since 1978, but Medina was fairly new with this church, according to the New York Daily News. The diocese spokesman, and this is what I always do, are still investigating the matter, and he will be offered help if it turns out he has a problem. He showed up drunk. A little bit too much of the blood of Christ before.
Yeah, not gonna go there. Washed in the blood.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Once again, and again, we're not. It's not that like I'm picking on priests, but they are held in such high regard. And then you get a story like this. Like, not only does he show up stinking drunk, but in the middle of the thing, falls down in the church. I mean, the people had to be stunned on that one.
Yeah, it's kind of problematic because, in terms of, because the acculturated belief and the emotion involved. There's nothing you can really add to that,
No.
It's like there's nothing you can really say.
Actually, the best things said were by some of the people who commented on the article. Now with the internet, you have the ability to anonymously comment all the time.
That should be great. That should be good.
So one of my phrases I marked here was a guy wrote, "Forgive me, Father, for I have ginned." Another one wrote, "I guess he was full of spirits."
Whoa.
Another one, "It's better than..."
That was so bad I could have said it.
Yeah, right. That's a bad pun. It's better than a moil at a bris.
Hello.
My favorite one, though, was, "Gee, the church suspended him? Sounds like they're all over it. Too bad they aren't as swift with the molesters."
Yeah, yeah.
And we're going to get to that on the next show about the child molesters, because we do have some new developments there to talk to you about.
Yeah, we have. It'll be the segments of the complaint that was issued by the Center for Constitutional Rights, filed a criminal complaint filed with The Hague. So now, that'll be the next show.
Someone suggested that they should keep all priests drunk because it would be harder to get it up and rape children.
Whoa!
That was low. That was low. But anyway, just make sure that if you're going to have your child baptized in a church, any church, that the person doing it is at least sober. Well, as we know,
We're going to be accused of Catholic bashing, you know.
well, they're not the only one who conducts baptisms. Actually, there are
Right.
Christian churches that eschew baptism.
Really?
Yes, yes. When I was a member one time of a Protestant called the Moravian Church, which for people who want to look it up, the Moravian Church is a very, very liberal
Yeah.
church. They have 3 or 4 essentials, and basically their motto is, in these essentials, which have to surround, of course, God and Jesus Christ.
Right.
On all other things, liberty. So they take no position like on gay marriage or abortion.
Right.
Those are personal things that they don't get
I
involved
wonder
in
if
that.
the Unitarians hold baptisms.
I don't know. I was never a Unitarian.
Yeah. It might be elective, you know.
In fact, do you know what Ambrose Bierce defined a Unitarian as? Someone who denied the divinity of a Trinitarian.
Yes, but would that be a social Trinitarian or an anti-social Trinitarian?
Well, I'll have to consult Andrew's book. If you ever get a hand on it, it is one of the better, more amusing books around. Ambrose Bierce was a newspaper columnist around the turn of the century, and I mean the 19th to the 20th century. And he had come up with all these puns and redefinitions of words. And eventually, you know, at the beckoning of his editor and other people, gathered them all together and put them in a book called The Devil's Dictionary.
Oh yes, I think I've heard of it.
Right, and it's for instance, the New Testament, all right, is a divinely inspired instrument, most admirable, a person who follows a new, what was it? A Christian is a person who believes that the New Testament is a book. Essentially, was saying that it was recommended for his neighbor.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
not for himself.
Right.
You had to.
right.
I
had to
messed
be
that
there
up terribly,
first.
but you had to be there. Well, of course, everybody was complaining early on that New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg banned religious services or religious clergy from speaking at the 9/11 ceremonies because he had said that it was for the families. And for the prior 9 years, every ceremony the religious did not attend. So his rationale was, why do it now?
Yeah, right.
You
right,
know, and he was right. And we said it on a previous show. Look, supernaturalism was the accelerant that fueled the attacks on 9/11. All right? Supernaturalism exploited 9/11 for everything they can get. And yet they wanted to try and pull off something of religious solidarity, which simply does not exist. That's an ephemeral photo opportunity. But once that's over, they go back into their respective cults, criticizing the other guy's cult.
Right. In fact, a little later, I'd like to, go discuss an article that was in USA Today.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. What a lot of people don't remember is that 6 days after the attack on the World Trade Center in New York City, there was an interfaith service at Yankee Stadium.
Right.
Okay? Now, you would think, oh, well, there you go, Yankee Stadium, people getting together, ministers of all callings. Well, it didn't turn out that way because the Missouri Synod of the Lutherans didn't like it that their minister was there consorting with pagans. Okay?
Right.
There were other religious groups that didn't want to blend in and essentially take the position that all these gods are equal.
Yeah, well, yeah. In fact, from that article, a spokesman for the spokesperson from the Lutheran Missouri Synod said that we avoid civil.
Oh, was it Luther? Yeah, Luther.
We avoid civil religion and syncretistic worship. Syncretism is a big word for mixing religions.
Right. In other words, it's what our First Amendment does. It makes religion syncretistic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a pluralistic society where theoretically, religion is not promoted or prohibited. Basically, everybody can do what they want. Well, one thing it does is that in terms of interpersonal relationships and the things that you really have to do, the nuts and bolts of getting along during the day, religion has nothing to do with it. So it doesn't matter if your grocer is a Buddhist and you know the mailman is a Catholic. The needs and concerns of your day-to-day living in a modern society are the things that you deal with first and foremost.
The secular things.
Yeah, the secular things, and it doesn't matter. You know, it's nothing that most of what we have to do has nothing to do with somebody else's religion.
You know, in the week to 10 days leading up to the 9/11 ceremonies, nothing was said about the Yankee Stadium interfaith service that occurred 6 days after the attacks.
Yeah.
But plenty has been said about what occurred 4 days later in New York. And that was the Atlanta Braves and the New York Mets playing the first baseball game after 9/11, brought everyone together. The players, even before the game, came out, shook hands, embraced. It didn't matter who won. The fact was, this became...
We're all Americans.
That we were all Americans.
Right.
Religion played no role. That is what people remember.
Yeah.
You know, and you hear it in the interviews here. I was at the game. Oh, it was such a unifying experience, blah, 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 all this positive. Right. You will never hear one person say that the interfaith ceremony was unifying.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So I think, you know, Bloomberg really did the right thing. I think the article you're referring to also, Dennis, is after 9/11 was where were the
evangelicals?
And I found it interesting. Now, this was by Kathy Lynn Grossman of USA Today.
That's right, right.
And it could be that evangelicals were snubbed when no clergy were invited. Does it bother you that a rainbow of religious traditions, but no conservative evangelical voices were invited to speak even at Washington National Cathedral's Sunday morning vigil? Molly Hemingway at the critique site Get Religion wondered why Sikhs, Hindus, and Muslims, but no Southern Baptists or pastors from the Lutheran Missouri Synod or the more traditionalist wing of Presbyterians were on the cathedral program. Other commentators thought that the Episcopal Cathedral's clergy stood for the nation's scores of Christian denominations, just as the rabbi of Washington Hebrew congregation, a Reform synagogue, stood for dozens of branches of Jewish traditions and so on. Some argued that evangelicals didn't join the lineup at the microphones because they don't want to blend in, which is what you say.
Yeah.
That's where the secular activities are more desirable, because in the secular activities, people can blend in. There is no pre-existing obligation that you need to join in that, other than that, to use the Atlanta Brave game as an example, you root for your team. You root for people and you root for each other, and that's it. You're not criticizing, you're rooting.
You know, it never ceases to amaze me how absolutely petty and small-minded, you know, some people are in regards to faith. You know, it's what are they saying about their God? You know, do they really think? Well, I don't know. I like to say secularism is for grown-ups. You know.
Yeah, it's for the mature.
Yeah,
it is for the mature. And one of the, of course, evangelicals that were mentioned in the article, and again, I don't know why elected officials and other leaders go and hold court with this guy, because I don't know what he brings to the table, and that's Franklin Graham, the son of Billy Graham.
Well, he wrote, you know, and the article goes on to say that when he, or as the 10th anniversary neared, he wrote in Charisma News about how the sacrifice of innocent lives on that tragic date and thousands of servicemen and women in the subsequent wars is nothing compared to, quote, the debt each and every person owes to the Lord Jesus Christ for dying for our sins.
Oh, that's nice. Nothing like peeing on the armed forces.
Yeah, and the people that died in the towers, and the article goes on to note that there's no call in Graham's column for brotherhood, forgiveness, mercy, or interfaith understanding.
Yeah.
His focus is always the same. Tell as many people as we can how they can be saved before it is eternally too late.
Okay,
I mean,
using the threats, the whole thing is too late. Yeah.
I mean, what does it say about their God? I mean,
There was, you know, we didn't need Graham, and I'm glad he stayed away.
yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
This is like this fascination now, just to get off slightly, with recently guys like Rick Perry and Mitt Romney looking for an audience with Donald Trump? Give me a break. All right, Rick Warren. Now, Rick Warren is a big anti-gay pastor on the West Coast.
Right.
He was holding his own 9/11 memorial prayer service.
Right, and both McCain and Obama had to basically suck up to him. To Rick Warren during the 2008 campaign.
Yeah. And he did it. He couldn't do it in conjunction that we're joining with the greater audience of people. No, he did it as a rebuttal to the clergy-free New York event, which, by the way, I watched. Did you see any of it at all, Dennis?
No.
I watched some of it. I had it on during the day. And it was really, it was wonderful to see an event where people were sharing with one another without having to make their way through the jungle growth of faith in order to see the next person, you know. And the reason I had it on during the day, and I'm sure I've mentioned this before, is I was there that day. I was a block and a half away. When I was walking to work, I saw people jumping from Tower 1. Whoa. That's a sight and an image I will never forget. Looking out the window of my office building, I did see the second plane hit the second tower. Oh. Okay. We all went down to the basement of our office building because there was a big gym downstairs, so it fit everybody. And when we heard the rumble, we thought it was another plane coming upon us, and we saw through a TV monitor that it was the towers coming down. So we were trapped there for a good 4 to 5 hours. And when we finally came out and the fire department instructed us, they took all the towels from the gyms, they wet them, and we had to wrap them around our faces in order to breathe while we walked to the ferry terminals, because the Staten Island ferry was right down there and was prepared to remove people from downtown Manhattan. And I remember coming out, and it looked like a scene from a George Romero zombie film.
Sure, sure.
Cars were in the middle of the street. Everything was covered with soot. People were. They were walking around with a blank look on their face, confused, fearful, hurt. You know, and those are images that I will take with me for the rest of my life. And the one image that I will always take is right outside my building after that attack. Now, the entire downtown New York was closed for a week.
Right.
A week later, they opened up so some of the workers could go back, okay? We went back, and I saw a messenger's bike chained to our building with dust on it, all right? Which indicates to me it was there from when the towers collapsed.
Sure.
That bike remained there for 6 months.
Wow.
Unclaimed.
Wow.
And I could only think that the owner of that bicycle, and I hope he was identified through the great work of the forensic scientists, because the clergy is not going to identify anything. They're only going to identify an opportunity. That I hope he was identified, and you know his family was given closure. And the other thing that struck me the most is when after the first week, when we went back to work, I walked down there just to see how far, you know, you couldn't get too close, but because it was all cordoned off and the National Guard was there and everything. Was walking down there, and I had a feeling that I never had before. The sun shone on me.
Yeah.
And I felt the heat of the sun for the first time in that area. And I have been down there for 20 years. Never felt the sun. And it's good to see now that we have a memorial with trees and water now. And now they're going to benefit from this sunlight. So, you know, those are the two things. So, but you know, bums like Rick Warren and Franklin Graham, they can't understand this junk.
Well, you know,
not junk, but they can't understand these feelings.
But I think that goes to the more general idea, and I don't want to get off topic, except that it reminds me of a point that I think that Richard Dawkins has made about religion, that the whole point about tolerating other religions, obviously they can't all be right.
Right.
They can all be wrong.
They can be.
Yeah. But there's a certain, I guess it can only go so far, because if you get too liberal, then what's the point of being what's the point of being separating into these separate religions? If for instance, when New York City Atheists had their bus campaign, said that you don't have to believe in God to be a moral person.
Absolutely, which is an accurate statement.
And I forgot it was I don't know if it was with a cardinal or the Archbishop of New York, agreed. He had basically agreed.
Was it Dolan still at the time? No,
I'm
I think
not
it was
sure.
his predecessor.
Egan?
Ah,
No, maybe it was.
yeah.
I don't know, whoever it was, and I'm
who they spirited off to because he protected pedophiles in the Boston
right,
area.
But,
yeah.
but the point is, I mean, he said that was true, and there actually have been Christian and Jewish clergy people who have said, the same thing, that you don't have to believe in God to be a moral person. But at what point do you get so liberal? I mean, it comes down to.
But aren't they going against their Bible by accepting that, by saying that?
Well,
because doesn't the Bible say that the fool who says in his heart there is no God, and they're wicked and corrupt?
And it's kind of like, and not just towards atheism, but even the whole idea. And I think that religious
religious competition.
Yeah, but and I think obviously we would all agree, any sane person would agree, that religious tolerance is a good thing. But looking at it from the standpoint of each religion, if the next person's religion is just as valid as mine, then what's the purpose of my having that religion as opposed to any other religion?
Right. What would be the point?
What would be the point? So I mean, and that's the point. I think that's what Dawkins stresses, is that at some point, religion can only afford to be so tolerant, without giving up each in religion without giving up its particular, the integrity and identity of that.
Of what makes it unique and different from the others.
Right. Why be a Christian or a Baptist as opposed to a Methodist or
a Buddhist
or a Catholic or Jewish or Hindu, So and I think in some ways, Dawkins would say that I think, I don't want me to speak for him, but filtering it through what I think is his interpretation,
which is what we all do,
that in some ways Dawkins probably would think that Franklin Graham was being more honest than the others, because he comes right out and says, that
I'm right and you're all wrong.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what it that's what it is, because not that I'm I'm not endorsing that, but
no, but it is true. It's funny that when you mentioned it, because in this article was mentioned in 2001, the New York region held an interfaith prayer service at Yankee Stadium. But in the aftermath, the head of the 2.6 million member Lutheran Church Missouri Synod's Atlantic Division was suspended, and the higher officers of the national denomination in a letter said, joining in prayer with pagan clerics in Yankee Stadium was an offense both to God and to all Christians. Now, I would venture that there was a preponderance of Christians at Yankee Stadium.
Oh, I would think.
So is he saying that they're offending themselves by joining in with other people?
Oh, I think it's a tad worse than that. I think the implication is that those people who consider themselves Christians aren't real Christians in the eyes of this pastor. Not the pastor who made the statement, but that higher official.
The higher official, by calling.
Well, I mean, but you get that a lot. I mean, I've seen this on the internet. basically, well, people, you know,
Well, some are more equal than the others.
yeah, well, yeah, but the idea, I mean, you know, again, not that I'm, of course, I have a fundamental philosophical difference with Catholics, but it's interesting that to this day, there's a lot of anti-Catholic sentiment on the internet where people just come right out and say make a distinction between Christians and Catholics.
Yes.
To me, they're all, if they believe, accept Jesus Christ as their Savior, they're all Christians.
But the Catholic Church did that to me when I went to school, to Catholic school in the late 50s.
Right.
All right? Here I am, a third grader, and I'm being told do not associate with Protestants.
Yeah.
Now, my cousins are Protestants.
I remember you saying that.
And I'm saying, what, these people are going to tell me that I can't associate with my cousins? Screw them.
Right.
So even at the tender age of 8, I'm going, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You know, this sounds really stupid. You know, and I went and hung out with my Protestant cousins and other relatives, and that started the decline of my separation from the church. Well, you know, we're down to the final minute. Dennis, this goes so fast.
Yeah.
I think in closing, it's good to say that we congratulate Mayor Bloomberg of New York City for conducting a successful secular event that everyone who was there will remember.
And there doesn't appear to be any major backlash from it either.
There is none. Actually, there was one, and you know what? If you stay tuned, the next show, I'll just open up a little segue about a couple of letters that did come into the Daily News.
Okay.
Complaining about where was the clergy. You know, that somehow they didn't think that the ceremony was somber and serious enough unless you had you know, someone in fancy garb, you know,
well,
babbling away.
We'd be disappointed if they didn't. So.
Right. So anyway, on behalf of Dennis Horvitz and myself and American Atheists, we'd like to thank you for watching the Atheist Viewpoint. Remember, please visit our website, www.atheist.org. We have a AA News, which is published intermittently that you can get free through the internet. We also have American Atheist Magazine, and you can join to be a member of American Atheists for a nominal fee. Again, go to this website, check us out, and if you have any comments or questions about this show, you can write to American Atheists, and you know, hopefully we'll get it here and we'll address it on the air.
Right.
So once again, on behalf of everybody here, we thank you for joining the Atheist Viewpoint. Until next time.
Bye-bye.